Ever since the Nintendo Switch first came out, fans have been wanting to see the core Persona series pop up on the console sooner than later, but nobody ever really thought it was possible till Joker made his debut in Smash Ultimate, and ever since that happened, both Persona fans and curious Switch owners have been fiending for the series to finally make the jump from Sony more than ever, which I've been saying is eventually gonna happen any chance I've gotten, but with Catherine Full Body only selling 7,000 copies on the Switch in Japan, some people probably think Atlus is having second thoughts on pulling the trigger if it's something they were ever truly considering at all, but if you ask me, I think that despite Catherine's performance on the Switch, the Persona series is going to continue to break free from Sony, even beyond the recent port we saw on the PC. So sit back in your stepdad's favorite gaming chair, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, the world's most dynamic Ladfian Cameron all one word, to tell you why Catherine Full Body sales will not hinder the mainline Persona games from coming to the Nintendo Switch. Alright, so for a game to only sell 7,000 copies in an opening weekend in Japan does sound pretty awful, especially considering that a year prior, that very same game sold 54,000 copies on the PS4 and 8,000 copies on the long-dead PS Vita. So really, it's not all that crazy to assume that Atlus would look at these numbers and start to question just how badly Switch owners really want to play their games, but even though Catherine's definitely got a decent following, it's still a somewhat obscure game that literally nobody asked for, so it shouldn't be all that surprising that the 86th version on the Switch didn't light the world on fire in its first week. Man, don't get me wrong, I just recently played the game for the first time on Twitch, and I absolutely loved it, mainly for the fact that there's never been another game quite like it in history that I'm aware of. But even though I could easily see why some people would consider this one of their all-time favorite games, I'd be lying if I said that it had a lot of mass appeal to it. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say that more people would probably hate it than love it. For those of you who don't know, it's basically a 3D puzzle game with assloads of cutscenes and social simulation elements thrown in for good measure, with 12 different endings total. But regardless of whether or not this game sounds like something you'd be personally interested in, there's no denying the fact that it's not a Persona game at all. I mean, there's plenty of references littered all over the place, like optional Persona songs you can play in the bar, and plushes for Morgana, Teddy, and Koro-chan, but this is not a game that anybody'd recommend as either a starting point for the Persona series or a substitute to it, unless you just like the voice actors a lot, I guess. And seeing as how Catherine is in fact not a Persona game, I'd find it hard to believe that this was supposed to be some kind of a test for Atlus to decide whether or not to port the mainline Persona games over to the Switch. I mean, hell, even Persona 5 Scramble's a bad game to test the waters on the Switch, because despite the fact that the story's a sequel to Persona 5, the gameplay's a complete spin-off and offers almost nothing that people love about the mainline game, so it's only just barely a better test than Catherine. Whether it be longtime Persona fans who just want to play these games on the Switch, or curious Smash fans who want to see what all the fuss is about, I think that Atlus is well aware that what people want to see on Nintendo's little hybrid that could are the mainline Persona games, and that everything else they've been bringing to the console's got nothing to do with testing the waters or anything like that, and everything to do with simply wanting to make some extra money. After all, if there were a high demand for Capcom to bring the remakes of Resident Evils 2 and 3 to the Switch, they wouldn't test the waters by porting Breath of Fire 4 over from the PS1, but if they did port that game after fans asked for Resident Evil, then I think we could assume that it was probably already in the works for a while, and that they wouldn't base their decision on whether or not to bring Resident Evil over on the sales of Breath of Fire. I mean, don't get me wrong, if games like Catherine were selling like 10 million copies on the Switch, then I'm pretty sure we'd see the entire Persona series on there in like 20 minutes. But all I'm saying is that I don't think Atlus is testing the waters with these games or anything like that. Man, I don't think Catherine selling like 10 million Switch copies would hurt the chances of Persona coming over necessarily, but the main reason why I think Atlus is bringing non-Persona games over to the Switch is simply to make some easy money, and in the case of Shin Megami Tensei 3, they probably just want to give people a taste of what that series is all about before the 5th game comes to the Switch in the hopes of increasing the game's sales. Personally, I think making the Shin Megami Tensei remaster a multiply would be a better idea to help increase the sales for the 5th game, just like how I think bringing the Persona series to the Switch would increase the sales for Persona 6 if it were a PS5 exclusive, but that's neither here nor there. But like I said before, Catherine Full Body was already running just fine on the Vita, so porting it over to the Switch probably only took Atlus like 5 minutes to do, and even though it only sold 7,000 copies, I'm sure it was still profitable to do. And not only do those numbers leave the digital sales out, but they also don't even consider how many people bought the game after the first week, let alone the worldwide sales, which at the time of this recording are still unknown, but they're usually a lot higher. And even though Catherine Full Body was considerably updated from its original release, it's still ultimately a 9-year-old game, and I can't imagine that Atlus had to invest a lot of effort into copy and pasting the Vita version over to the Switch, so Atlus would be silly not to want to make some quick and easy money with one more port. If a game as obscure as Catherine could sell even 7,000 copies on the Switch in the first week in Japan, then just imagine how much money Atlus would make from porting a Vita game over to the Switch that people actually wanted, like Persona 4 Golden. I mean, while Catherine Full Body does in fact run just fine on the Vita, the original game was made for the PS3 and Xbox 360, whereas Persona 4 Golden was originally made for the PS2, so if Atlus went through the trouble of porting Catherine over to the Vita in 2019 of all years, then why wouldn't they go through even less trouble to port Persona 4 over to the Switch after they already broke free from Sony anyway by putting the game on Steam? Especially when Persona 4 hasn't been on nearly as many platforms as Catherine. I know some people think that since Atlus didn't announce a Switch port for Persona 4 alongside the PC version, then it must not be in the works, but let's not forget that at the time of this recording, it still hasn't been ported over to the PS4 either, and you can't tell me that that won't eventually happen as well. Besides, just look at how long it took for Catherine Full Body to come to the Switch after being released on the PS4 and Vita. I mean, I don't have any idea why Atlus waited so long, but the game did eventually come to Nintendo, and I really do think that it's only a matter of time before we see Persona 4 come as well, and whether it be on the Switch or whatever Nintendo's next console ends up being, I think Persona 5 is gonna break free as well. But seeing as how myself and many other people just bought that game twice and played it for like 200 hours in the past few years, I think it'd be in Atlus's best interest to shift the spotlight to Personas 4 and possibly even 3 for the immediate future. But anyway, what do you think? Is Atlus testing the waters for Persona on the Switch with completely different kinds of games, or do you think that regardless of whether or not Persona does come to the Switch, it'll have nothing to do with the sales of games like Catherine? Either way, let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, I'll try my goddamnedest to respond to everybody. But let me tell you, if there's 2 games from 2011 who should be ported over to the Nintendo Switch, then it would definitely be today's patrons of the day, Gaz Owen and Red Jar. If you want to be badasses like these two, then consider supporting FU Game Crew on Patreon for loot boxes and silly rewards in the mail. Send pictures or videos of you rocking merch if you want to make cameos in my videos, and follow me on Twitch if you ever want to hang out whenever I play video games sometimes. My name's Cameron, all one word, and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.